Chief Technology Officer at Net Solutions. I've spent decades helping brands build digital experiences. Today's topic touches the lifeline of every product. How do we build products that attract users, but also keep them engaged and coming back, and how AI can make that particular process scalable? Joining me to discuss this topic is Karthik Ayyappan Gunasekaran. Karthik is the VP of AI and software products at PMI, where he leads PMI Infinity and the Gen AI product platforms, overseeing all software powering PMI certifications and LMS content. He is currently architecting PMI's agentic AI platform while heading the product, design, and research teams. Before this, at Udemy, he founded the globalization function, launched teams in Japan and India, and drove over $100 million in annual recurring revenue. He pioneered multilingual Gen AI tools, scaled mobile apps to over 65 million monthly active users, built a $50 million ARR pipeline, and increased engagement by 30%. He also serves on the board of Capella University, part of Strategic Education, Inc., where he advises on AI, machine learning, and emerging technologies in education. Hello, Karthik. Welcome to the webinar.
Hi, Joseph. Thank you so much for inviting me. Happy to be on this webinar.
Okay. Karthik, let us start with the placement of engagement and retention in product development process. Should we think about it at the initial MVP stage itself, where we might build features that may not be really needed for that, or only at the growth stage where it might be a little late? So what do you think about it? What are your ideas on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it's an interesting question, right? I mean, it's part of this whole chicken and egg problem. From my experience, when you're building a new product at the beginning of anything, the first important task to look for is the product market fit. Are we going after the right problem that needs to be solved for the user? Without that, you don't have a product. Without that, forget about engagement and retention. So I always ask, any new product initiative or any new feature, that you want to build as part of a legacy product in itself. The first thing is that feature or a product solving for the user's problem? And if it solves, what is the value add? How much does it solve? How does the design look? I think it's quite important to focus on that particular use case, which is not necessarily engagement and retention. It's more about either is the usage, is the usage fulfilling what the user is looking to do as part of the product. Engagement and retention are aspects that we build, usually as part of a subscription-based product to increase the stickiness, right? So that happens once you solve for that problem, and if there is the stickiness that is built into the product, that's when engagement and retention comes, which is quite important for any SaaS-based companies. So, to me, the first at the heart of any product development initiative or product management initiative is the product market fit, and that is a moving target, because let's be honest, as things change, the user's problems changes. Is the solution that we're developing, is it evolving to capture that user problem and solving for that problem? So it's quite important to keep that in mind, and then have these other revolving aspects, like the engagement, retention, or the MAUs, DAUs, WAs, all of these kinds of metrics that we track, is to really look at the product health at the end of the day. But the first step is really for me to look at that product market fit, because that is at the end of the day the crosshair of us, in a sniper, as you see. Let's have the crosshair squarely on that user's problem, and then let's focus on the engagement retention metrics, because as the problem evolves, solution evolves, we need to make sure it's staying relevant. So that's the way to think of it. It's a journey. Engagement retention helps you in measuring that journey, whether are we on the right track as we evolve the product, in my opinion.
Thanks, Karthik. Yeah, it's a journey, as you are saying. and we need to the product has to evolve in this particular journey. Karthik, you also talked about some of the metrics. So now, how do I determine a particular engagement is meaningful? So let us say, for example, we are at the growth stage, as you rightly said, and then we are building these kinds of engagement, but not all engagements are meaningful and valuable. Even for the user, I might be just browsing through and everything. Even for the company, it may not be whatever the engagement, that it may not be meaningful and valuable. And you already talked about some of the metrics. So, are there any metrics to identify what engagements are meaningful and valuable and what are not? And how should product owners think about this?
Yeah, again, this is part of the evolution. So it's the evolution of a product itself, right? I mean, at in no one particular stage of the product's evolution can we say, okay, these are the serious customers, these are the non-serious customers. That the percentage is going to vary. At the very beginning, we are looking to funnel as many broad app tourists, as we call it, into the product, right? Because that helps us in refining which leads are quite important, which are the high quality leads. So we refining. It's a learning journey, even to say, like, we have an idea of who the ideal customer is, right? I mean, we have some characteristics. Maybe, like in the edtech world, you think about, okay, this person is part of the higher ed market, 18 to 25 years of age, STEM career oriented education. So these are some characteristics that helps us in defining what kind of traffic we want to drive to the product. But then it is still at a broader level, because we don't want to narrow ourselves right from the beginning to say, okay, this is all the traffic we need, because it has to be as broad as possible so that we have enough learnings to refine what that leads look like. So at the beginning, it's going to be a lot more app tourists than we than we would like to, but that's exactly what helps us in defining what those characteristics are. The ideal function of any app visitor, or any product visitor, you want to call it, if it's not a SaaS-based application or anything, at the end of the day, the ideal behavior is that person converting, right? At the end of the day, is there a dollar value attributed to that? Like, that's the, as a business, that's what you would expect. Or you can look at even indirect forms of revenue. Like, one of the famous example that I like to cite all the time is about how Amazon's Kindle was a loss making product that was driving revenues for all of its other audible content. So it was okay to drive as many app tourists or app visitors or product visitors into Kindle, because Kindle was driving indirect revenues, on multiple levels for different types of content consumption, through that particular device. So that's an example of a loss-making product which didn't need direct conversions, rather indirect conversions were measuring the success of the product. So that's another unique way to think about it. But for a large part, most of the app visitors, the success metric is going to be some kind of a conversion, right? That's one. Or increasing the stickiness for early stage startups or earlier in the product journey of any big company too, is like, is the product sticky enough for the user to keep coming back because it solves a problem, there is a need that the product is meeting for the user, and the person is coming back into the product again and again and again, which is basically retention, right? Is the person over a period of is a lifetime value of the user 6 months to a year or multiple years in some cases. That talks about the health of the product and the relevance of the product as the person grows in his or her journey, or the product evolves in its own journey. Like, for example, I used to work at Kaplan, and we used to have some subscription products that could go from higher ed to college. Like, you're a junior in high school and then you end up in med school, but Kaplan has a product that can actually take you towards that journey. So that is increase in stickiness. Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, it's relevant. And even it's once you enter med school, that is product relevant. So that is an example of a very good retention use case, where the subscription and the product is so relevant with as the user grows in their educational journey, the product evolves with new offerings and encourages a stickiness. So that's an example of retention. More short-term metrics would be things like daily active users, weekly active users, monthly active users. And these are areas where mobile apps play a very significant role to drive that constant engagement. So in many ways, engagement, drives retention, because you need that some amount of healthy engagement. Even in engagement, there are two types, right? There is qualitative engagement and quantitative engagement. Qualitative engagement is just a vanity metric. There is no point if I just keep visiting the app and open the application and then not do anything. But it's another thing if I engage with the app and actually do something, like maybe I'm giving you my inputs. This is what I want to do. These are my specific interest criteria, etc. And I interact with the product. Like if it's an AI product, I'm prompting the LLM to do something, get something in return, deploy some agents to solve a problem. That's a very good quality kind of an engagement metric. Whereas bad quality engagement metric is the vanity metric. In one case, we found that a user was visiting the app so many times, which was kind of but was only staying on the product for maybe a few seconds or 10 seconds, and then closes the application. When we investigated further, it was basically that we were having these Instagram ads running for that particular product. And every time that person opens Instagram app, our ad was showing up. And this person inadvertently keeps clicking on the ad by mistake, which opens the application. So as a result, our tracking mechanisms basically say, like, you can look it on Amplitude or Tableau, which will be like, okay, the person came in, opened the app. The same user ID keeps opening the app again and again. So that's a distraction at the end of the day. So that's an example of a low quality engagement metric that you don't want to be focusing on. But these are that's kind of how I would kind of bucket the engagement retention mechanisms, low quality, high quality metrics, and work with this.
Thanks, Karthik. Thanks for that particular example also. And this could actually off track the product owners, especially at the
Yeah.
metrics level. And you're right, that could sidetrack the product owners, and then they might be looking at that. So we need to look at it from a holistic, qualitative manner rather than only from a quantitative manner. Uh, Karthik, we cannot talk about engagement without gamification. Almost all of the popular successful apps will have some form of gamification, some streaks and achievements and leaderboards and so on and so forth. What's the play of gamification in engagement and retention also? And now you already talked about some of the AI process, AI agents, and so on and so forth. So what's the play of AI in gamification, and what's the interplay? How do they dance together for this?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good question, right? I mean, anybody who is in product is always been fascinated by the various gamification mechanisms we have seen throughout the product. Everything from the New York Times puzzle app to Duolingo today, or Kahoot. For example, all of these have excellent gamification. Even LinkedIn started throwing in some gamification mechanisms, right? To solve puzzles and a few games there. See, the reality is that gamification existed even before any of these AI, the Gen AI or even the AI revolution itself. Gamification existed already. It was more deterministic at that time, but now it is becoming more and more hyper personalized, even more specific gamification personalized for your experience that are popping up today. So here's my take. um, Gamification is a very good engagement tool, as you mentioned, to bring the person back into the app, etc., to get that attention. Especially in the early stages of building a product, and you're trying to build momentum with some kind of critical mass that can use the product. It's quite important to bring them back into the app, and say, like, hey, there's a new feature here, try this out, etc., so that people are aware. Most of the times, many of these new features are launched, and it's the messaging that doesn't get through. But through gamification, it's a way to hook the user back into the app to some kind of a push notification, or some kind of a reward mechanism, etc. Even to complete the profile, right? I mean, here's the thing, like 4 or 5 pages, there is a progress bar here. These are all kind of like hacks. It's a brain hack to say, like, I cannot stand to see that my progress bar is stuck at 3 out of 6 pages. I want to complete the remaining three. It's kind of a brain hack, in many ways. So that has happened for the last, I don't know, 10 plus years. Maybe, we've been using it, quite efficiently on both web and mobile. Mobile, did its own thing with in-app messages, push notifications, and other tracking mechanisms on the go. When I'm traveling, when I'm waiting in line, those kinds of gamification mechanisms have been helpful. But now with Gen AI, it is again another whole Pandora's box that has opened up. Even more personalized gamification methods, leaderboards, to track what your peer is doing. How can you how can you lead the way amongst your peer group? Very unique custom groups that are evolved to do this. But even the whole Instagram experience, I know, for example, you can share your reels, and you can gamify the whole thing, like who is sharing more on the story feeds, etc. With your friends, you can do that. And these algorithms are also becoming more and more personalized with more AI based solutions. I think this kind of brings up this whole unique aspect of AI, gamification using AI, and how much of it is healthy and unhealthy. And this is where the whole concept of responsible AI comes into play. That's a huge topic here in the US. For example, the Meta founders and the TikTok founders, all these guys have been called in by Congress to say, like, is this actually healthy habits, like these kinds of mechanisms to pull people back into the app just for your just to increase your quantitative vanity metrics. It is at the expense of a user's mental health. Think about young children, teenagers, probably wasting their times and also getting into some kind of unhealthy habits because of these kinds of gamification features and AI based algorithms that are pulling them back into the app again and again. Just because there is a lot of psychology involved here too, right? That the hacking mechanisms to know what exactly works. Even the look at the number explosion of mobile app games, they know how to get you in, what makes the user download this particular game, and score the points, etc. There is a lot of those mechanisms involved. But it kind of reminds me of the previous Surgeon General's words of wisdom. Any online application, web application geared towards especially with education or healthcare or responsible applications, should be focusing on the qualitative aspects of gamification, not the quantitative aspects of gamification. If you think about any of these free platforms out there, they are focusing on quantitative gamification aspects because they want more eyeballs on into their application, so that more ads and more revenues for that generated from the platform. But at the end of the day, if you're really responsible, it is quite important for qualitative aspects of gamification. Like, let me give you one specific example, right? You know, in edtech, in education, for example, it is one thing to use all of these cool new technologies. Again, talk about AI, VR, AR, any kind of technology. But at the end of the day, the application is built for a specific purpose to
Mm,
drive your learning outcomes. At the end of the
mm,
day, you use the application and then you say, I actually learn something. Yeah, whatever simulations or VR, AR, whatever. But at the end of the day, I am a new person because there is a new delta, like there is a new skill value add that I learned. But if you just use the app just because I watched a video, I did a few things that the gamification board asked me to do, and at the end of the day I didn't learn anything, then the application has failed, regardless of your quantitative metrics beating all kinds of odds, in numbers. Did you actually learn something is the most important thing. A good example of someone who's mastered gamification in education is Duolingo. Duolingo, with its extraordinary ability to bring people back into the app, etc., etc., to learn new languages, is something to be admired about. But there is research now coming up which says, does Duolingo actually make you proficient in a language? That is still questionable. It is good enough for me to go to a restaurant in France or in Norway, speak the local language and get my way around with, having a cup of coffee, or, have a friendly banter here and there. But am I actually becoming proficient? That can happen only with, more advanced practice mechanisms, etc. Which again, Duolingo is trying to solve. Like, for example, the whole AI partner whom you can just call. I don't have a friend who speaks Norwegian, but I can actually use my Duolingo AI assistant, I keep forgetting the name, but you just call the AI and have some real time conversations in the language to master and build the proficiency. But gamification in itself, just focused on quantitative metrics, is not going to help. We need to look at this responsible use of responsible AI to build more qualitative engagement metrics to really drive any kind of valuable outcome, keep the do justice to the user, by making sure there is no mental health, adverse serial effects of using the application, etc. It's quite important to do that, and I think that's going to be the theme as we move into this new era of Gen AI in products.
You're absolutely right in that, Karthik, is the responsible AI, and even for the companies, even for the app as such, that whether it is driving towards that particular outcome and what that outcome is. Uh, so, is there a kind of a framework that you would have, or what you apply? And you have been in this particular industry for a very long time, tech. You've been in this industry for a very long time, and I'm sure you have some form of a mental model or a thought process, or something like that, which could actually help. Say, if you think in these lines, you will probably land in a proper place, or a better place than if not. So is there anything that you could share to say, okay, this is the framework to think about from a responsible AI perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I usually think of any AI applications in product management, using these 7 patterns of AI that I have. I don't know if you can put it up. So the 7 patterns of AI. This is kind of my framework and thinking for any product professional as they think about the applications of AI in their portfolio of products or a new product, etc. It's kind of self-explanatory in many ways, but hyper personalization is one of the biggest use case of Gen AI. Now I don't have to. In the previous deterministic AI revolution, it was more about bucketing users into certain behavior types, right? This is probably someone who is studying for an exam, or this is a passive learner, active learner, passive learner. This person is more interested in videos. This person is more interested in questions. Those kinds of broader level, play out there. Hyper personalization is, I know who Joseph Jude is. I know what exactly he wants. I know in his role as a CTO of Net Solutions, what are the key things that he would like to learn or know about, and target him with certain specific applications of what my product intends to do there. Recognition, think about facial recognition or that, the usual norm. Conversation, human interaction, again, a big use case. We have chat GPT and everything with your prompting behaviors, predictive analytics and decisions, goal-driven systems. This is kind of like part of the whole supervised learning models, right? Like with every interaction, is my application actually learning something about you and customizing the whole experience, geared towards you. Or you can train it for other systems as well. You see the next one being autonomous systems. Again, it kind of go hand in hand. Supervised learning, unsupervised learning, where autonomous systems, think about robots navigating the roads, everything from the Teslas and the Waymos and etc. going on. Patterns and anomalies. Again, that's a very big use case where all your think about all your lookers and the amplitudes and the Tableau dashboards, etc., which can constantly monitor your live application and highlight any anomalies and even pinpoint to say maybe this anomaly could be because of this particular problem in your database, etc. So these are the kinds of areas where AI could be applied. So the way I would recommend product folks to think about it is, start doing design sprints around each of these themes. Pick one theme, stick to that theme, and do a design sprint in that particular theme for a new product that you're trying to develop, or the portfolio of products that you're already managing. And think about where this pattern could be applied. There are multiple courses you have to go to dive deep into it, but think about where can you apply a recognition pattern or a predictive analytics pattern in your product, and dive deep to come up with a couple of features at the end of the 2 or 3 day sprint, however long you want to do, to really come up with those 2 or 3 features that could be really moving that qualitative engagement or retention needle in your product. I think that's how I would start thinking about it, and kind of as a framework, compartmentalize, start with, and go into those details of what you want to build. See, the other recommendation here is that AI products at the end of the day are data science projects, right? Without, it's garbage in, garbage out, the usual, cliched, saying, as sort of for the last 30 years of AI revolution. So it is quite important to have some foundational understanding of data science. So product managers today should have that basic understanding of what data science projects are, what is a database, how does this behave, what are data cubes, why are they important in this era of Gen AI. So these kinds of a little bit of foundational understanding is quite important. And then you think about, on top of that, you think about these running design sprints with these kinds of patterns. I think you're in for a good starting step to bring the teams together as a product manager and start designing and ideating around these kinds of themes.
Yeah, thank you, Karthik. All the audience, if you have any questions, please put them on the chat, and I will share it with Karthik, and we'll wait for the answers towards the end of the session. Karthik, thanks for this particular patterns of AI. What I like about this is it captures both the user interface part of it. So wherever you are interacting with the user, so say for example, hyper personalization, conversational UI, and whatever that you are interfacing with the customer user, but also it gives you a ability to think, a method to think at the backstage. As you rightly said, how do I identify the anomaly that could happen, and so that you can kind of work with that. So that's a good pattern that has both sides covered, so which is good. Now let's talk about let's move on to retention for a minute, since even though we have talked a little bit about retention, Karthik, you talked about Kindle. That's a very good example, and I want to pick that up and then double down on it. Kindle itself probably is not a revenue making monetization from that particular perspective, is not valuable, but it drove traffic and drove value to other products in the ecosystem. So from a retention point of view, what are the on app retention and off app retention that you can think of, what you have seen in other apps, and what you have implemented also? So how should product owners think about such kind of a retention, not just within the app itself, but also off app also? So say for example, sending email campaign. So Amazon does this really well. They will send you an email, this is in the cart for so many days, or these are the recommended products, and so on and so forth, right? So what are the off app retention mechanisms and techniques that product owners can think about?
Yeah, again, that's probably the whole life cycle product marketing solutions that are coming up. Like this is kind of the area where product and marketing are kind of coming together to think about that whole user journey, what the life cycle of the product would look like, etc. You brought about Amazon. That's again another example that I had in my mind. If you just think about their whole how they drove retention, the whole study on their whole Amazon marketplace, how they drove retention. So for the longest period, Amazon's marketplace was a loss-making platform. Their biggest profit-making product was, of course, AWS cloud services, etc., like which was skyrocketing, and Amazon was losing money for a long time until probably like the last 5+ years or so. It kind of turned around and started making profits. And if you think about one of the ways they drove their whole retention mechanism was first step was the Amazon Prime model, right? An annual subscription based kind of a model for priority delivery and priority in sales, etc., and visibility into sales, Black Friday sales, etc. Those kinds of models. So that was one. And then they doubled down further, because when there was Prime subscription, but a bulk of the marketplace interactions were one-off mechanisms. So in the spirit of talking about engagement, how can I maximize that engagement value and make it converted into a retention mechanism? Right? That was the thought process there. Instead of having these one-off transactions that is increasing engagement, how can I convert it into a retention mechanism? So that is where they again look at all the data and look at all the household materials, right? Like things like, I buy soap regularly, I buy toothpaste regularly, I buy trash bags regularly. These are all, say, they kind of built a model to say, like, how can I convert these one-off engagements into a retention metric? And that's where the whole subscription for these kinds of household materials came into being. So you can now see the whole, I can subscribe to my moisturizing lotion for like 2 months. Every 2 months, can you deliver it into a, deliver two boxes of this lotion, or a box, or a soap, etc. Like, that's another way to drive that whole predictable revenues, because at the end of the day, today Wall Street is all about ARRs, right? Annual recurring revenues. Am I driving ARR? Because they need that predictability to make sure your revenues are predictable, your health of the financial health of the company is good, and again, which drives the whole stock market and the entire Nasdaq and the NYSE, etc. So driving ARR on this whole ARR and the stock price valuation, etc. So that's a very good example of converting a short-term engagement mechanism into a retention mechanism. So that's just one of the things. Like, I kind of lost track of what your other question was in this particular
The off,
area.
like on app and the off app retention,
Yes.
how can, yeah.
Yeah. So in the whole life cycle marketing aspect, if you think about it, the you know there is good mechanisms where a mix of email and push notifications and in-app messages, etc., to remind the user that, hey, this product that you bought last time, it has a drop in price. Do you want to think about repurchasing that? Or have you thought about buying this other part? People who, in the whole carousel about people who bought the other product as well. These are all messagings that again, where Gen AI can do a very good job to help target. Again, this is where hyper personalization comes into play, to say this person purchased this particular product at this particular time frame. What kind of messaging can I do to make sure the person is able to come back again and again? So in Amazon's case, one of the things is, I used to, like, for example, I can see this from my example itself. I used to buy these one-off purchases of, let's say the soap, a bath soap. But it was doing a wonderful job of getting that data and getting back to me via email or notification, or just every time I open the app, to engage with me to say, you could have saved 20% just by doing this into subscription, or you could have just saved so much in your time to open the app and purchase if you just put on an automatic subscription model. So these are all ways to convert me and one-off purchaser into a subscription buyer. So that is, for example, a good success of how that lifecycle product marketing messaging converted me from a one-off engagement user to actually a retention user. That's a very good way to convert me. So that's that success, right? So these are all becoming much more targeted and hyper personalized with the advent of using Gen AI. There are products like Pendo.ai, which I've had very good success with, which can integrate, listen to the users, multiple email interactions, notifications, in-app messages, onboarding flows, etc., in the whole ecosystem of the product experience, to keep me active inside that ecosystem, and showcase that value that the product is driving to me again and again.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I see the off app use cases of Gen AI.
So what I'm getting, Karthik, from everything that you have shared, uh, from product owners shouldn't only think about the app itself and what are the features and the engagements and retention within the app itself. It's actually an ecosystem that they need to think about. Uh, uh, Email or notification or all the other aspects of it. So it becomes a little tricky also, or rather, probably we are putting a little bit of a heavy burden on the product owners, that they need to think from a holistic point of view. What are all, so you need to really understand the user and have a very good picture of the user, where all they engage and how they come into the app and where they branch out after using the app. And so you need to have a holistic view so that you can kind of tick all of these boxes to bring them engage with the app as well as uh, continue to use the app. That's what I'm getting,
Abs-
Karthik.
yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is the way to go, right? Because so not all the product managers and product folks are going to be in a startup trying to build a product from scratch,
Mm,
product, etc. Many of us are going to have a career in these large established companies. I can give you one example. I used to be the VP of products at Kaplan, and Kaplan is a large publicly traded edtech behemoth, been in the business for 60 years globally. It's very, very famous in the US and India for medical education, GMAT, GRE. So you can think about the number of products that they have. It is
mm,
literally about 200 to 300 different assessment areas. It has a university business, etc. So if you think about how the company has evolved, it has evolved in its own silos with each product not talking to each other, etc. But today, with the era, with the digital transformation that kicked off like about 10 plus 15 years ago, and now with AI transformation, there is a very, very good use case of unifying this whole product experience. And this is where I kind of briefly mentioned about the whole data cube approach, right? Like, let's think about this particular Kaplan's use case alone, right? I might have a user who probably engaged with my K through 12 product, be it some LMS offering that the person subscribed to. Let's say I was in grade 5 and I was using the Kaplan product, and I was growing up to get into high school. Once at that time, I am interacting with Kaplan's ACT or SAT product to prepare for my ACT SAT exam. But the whole thing is, from that transition, I'm transitioned into a new product of Kaplan. So my user ID has changed, and then for after my high school, I go on to another product of Kaplan, either to be into med school or engineering school or finance school, and then I prepare for the GMAT and GRE exam suite. So I go into another user ID, become another user ID, and so at every single point of time, there is a gap because of the product silos that have been developed because as a part of the legacy. I am jumping from one product to the other without the foundational, my platform knowing that's the same user whom we got into the product ecosystem in grade 5, growing up to become the doctor and becoming highly specialized. Think about if I could have just unify that whole product experience, the platform. I could have saved a ton of money in just the customer acquisition cost. I could have personalized the experience so well that the value add could have been converted into a retention model with a subscription based offering. And just think about the whole outcome that we could have driven from that, for that user by providing an amazing content and educational experience. So this is where the whole idea of data cube comes in, where at one, think about a data cube as like, these three segments, right? Three line segments, which what makes a cube. You have the ID in one place, and one segment could be more about this is my K through 12 product interaction, this is my higher ed product interaction, this is my professional learning product interaction. Now that is a data cube, and that is that's an example of the amount of information, personalized information I can collect for that particular product's problems and personalize the experience on the platform as much as possible. Like data cube, like just what I explained is a very, very simple mechanism. You can actually have multi-data cube models, add more and more cubes on top of that particular data structure, and all of a sudden you have a sophisticated system that can drive hyper-personalization as a pattern of AI for that user, and drive an amazing product experience. So a lot of us are going to be part of these kind of major big big companies. So it's quite important to think about it from that portfolio ecosystem angle as we apply a lot of these AI, Gen AI or AI, agentic AI, whatever area of AI you want to play in. I think it's quite important to think about it from that ecosystem and portfolio perspective.
Karthik, there are so many threads that I want to go in, and I'm fully aware of that time as well. Karthik, you talked about that customer ID being different when they are coming and engaging, and we operate in the e-commerce space, and this is one of our problem that our customers face is that. So as software product agency, we develop products for others, our customers. The customers themselves might have multiple e-commerce products, and it's the same customer coming in multiple products, whether it could be offline retail, some app, e-commerce app, and in-store app, and then they will have multiple apps, and it's the same customer coming everywhere, and the backend team does not know it's the same customer.
Right.
So one of the things that we are now in the process of is customer profile, building a customer profile. Now, if you are thinking about the app only now, you can kind of build all of that, but how do you build customers in the already existing silos? And then how do you stitch them together to say, hey, it's the same Joseph who is coming in multiple different apps of silos, right? So which is a very valid point. So what I'm understanding is this is a challenge not just in e-commerce, which is what I used to think that it is so specific to e-commerce. What I'm hearing from you is no, it doesn't have to be only in e-commerce. It's across all the other types of apps as well, is what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, this is, most of the companies are legacy organizations that predate the whole Gen AI revolution, obviously. So they are going to have their own silos and data ecosystems, etc. And the major problem is, like I said, to apply good AI based tools, it is first obviously a data science project. And for data science to have that visibility and control, you need to make sure our data lakes are in the right, are organized in the right fashion. So that investment is going to be crucial. And it's not, of course, it's not just e-commerce. Like it could be in healthcare, it could be in education, it could be in manufacturing. Every other industry has a very similar problem. Unless you're starting now and build, you are probably in that particular legacy era of having some siloed data infrastructure, which is probably going to be a hurdle as we think about these kinds of product features.
Karthik, while we are talking about it, I'm also starting to think if a product is getting developed today, now, they can all think about the foundational layers of AI, and then they can build from foundation on that.
Mhm.
But so often we have to deal with legacy apps that are there.
Right.
What do you think about, how do you think about, again, if you have any mental models or whatsoever, frameworks, mental models to think about, there are legacy apps that are there. They are all very successful. How can I bring in some of the patterns that you talked about, hyper personalization, detecting anomaly, and all of those kinds of stuff? How do I apply these patterns on top of existing legacy applications?
Yeah, it's a there's a lot to unpack there. It's a bit too simplified if I answer that question, in a couple of minutes. But the first step is it is very clear that Gen AI is the next era of revolution, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you either, if you're not on this train, you're probably gonna lose out in your game in the next few years if you haven't already. Like, take the very good example of Check.com. If you just look at their stock price, it is a very, very big example of how Gen AI has basically disrupted the entire organization. Check is a publicly traded company that was worth a few $1 billion. I remember there was a time when they even made an attempt to buy Udemy when we took Udemy public in 2021, and now it is smaller than 100 million or 70 million dollars. So this is a spectacular fall with the advent of Gen AI. So it's very clear this is the way to go. So what this means is the first step is there should be some kind of an investment by the company to make sure their foundational data infrastructure is in place to build some kind of a Gen AI solution.
Hmm.
So be it the organization of data lakes with centralized content management systems, meta tags, and metadata that is involved to make sure the quality of data is good as we feed these agentic systems for any kind of applications on each of these patterns that we're talking about. So that is a back-end non-user facing investment that companies have to do. In start small, whatever, but you should be having that. That's one. The other piece is that it is very important for product people to also think about, like I said, the problem statement, right? What are we trying to solve? Is this a very good use case of trying to solve for a user's problem? Like you can again think about hyper personalization as a very good example because it's very famous in ed tech. If someone wants to build a career, in let's say building mobile apps using React Native, then it is quite important for me to provide React Native courses for mobile application development on iOS and Android. That's very specific. That's a very good example of a hyper personalized recommendation. But if I recommend something like, okay, here's a React Native course, then that is too broad and that's not personalized to me. Like I might start the course and be like really lost. Okay, this is not what I'm wanting to do. I just want to focus on mobile applications development with React Native. How can I, how can that kind of feature be built? So those are the small use cases we should be thinking about to make sure there's a good product market fit. The last thing you want is to build some kind of an AI feature that is just to tick off that box on a checklist to say, okay, I too have a Gen AI feature, and the very famous examples of having a pop-up chat window open up and start interacting with it with no real material use or value add for the user. I think we should avoid those kinds of features to say I'm on the Gen AI bandwagon. Rather, have the grounded product philosophy of identifying the product market fit. Start with the problem statement and see if Gen AI is the right use case, right? It's the right thing to invest in, because sometimes maybe Gen AI is not the way to go. Maybe you don't need a Gen AI solution for some features, maybe because to build the feature it might be more expensive than the value add you even get. Or at the end of the day, if you even provide it for free, you better be making money for that free Gen AI feature that you've launched somewhere else, because Gen AI is not cheap; it is expensive. Every token is it's quite expensive as you consume, and as these LLMs with different versions come into are being launched, they're going to be quite expensive. So it's quite important to think of it in that fashion, like have the product market fit problem statement kind of thing in your start with that, but at the same time think about the ROI in itself. There should be some way to get that ROI, either in terms of engagement, attention, conversions, some fashion that is actually driving business value at the end of the day. Without business value, there is going to be some kind of a correction. I mean, the 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 the, the discussion is already out. Like next year, there is probably going to be some kind of a Gen AI based correction on many of these companies that have launched all of their Gen AI features. Like if they're really not making business sense, those features are probably going to be like reverted back or decommissioned or taken out, because you can't just run something for free without any strong business value there.
So Karthik, the more we talk about this, the more technology comes in. I think we have to go back to that foundational fundamentals, which is what I'm hearing again and again in this conversation, is that go look at the product market fit. Are you really solving the problem? Do you know who the customer is, and are you solving this particular problem? And everything else will have to flow from there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So which is again, so this is what I think, as you rightly said, don't patch Gen AI just because there is Gen AI. Look at your product, you look at your problem, look at how you're solving it, and understand whether Gen AI can actually solve this particular problem or not, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, it is that whole thing about customer is king at the end of the day. So start with the customer. There is a small, a sliver of aspect of called product operations, which
mhm.
where AI could be used in your internal operation to drive some efficiencies, automated dashboards, or automated, like everybody from Jira's and the ServiceNows and the Ahas have their own AI tools with connectors, which is driving some efficiency. So that is that non-user aspect as well, but that is a very small aspect of what product management is called product operations, where that can be driven. But think of it from the basic philosophy: customer is king. User facing problem statement, start with that problem, product market fit. That's how I see this
Yeah.
case.
Karthik, before we finish, I want to touch upon this. All of wherever that you have been, you have worked at products that have been used globally, not just one segment, not just one geography, but globally, cutting across even age groups. How should product owners think about globally, like building global products?
Mhm.
And again, say for example, it's solving a particular problem, so that is given. how does Gen AI help in it today? So say, for example, today, if I'm building a product, which is going to be used globally across different geographies, across different age groups, how should I use AI, Gen AI especially, to think about that particular building that particular product? Both, I mean, I'm primarily interested in the user interface part of it, but if you think, there is a lot of value in the operational part of it, also, I'm okay to, we should talk about it, but much more as user interface point of view, user interaction point of view. How do you think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. This is another big use case for globalization. Like it used to be hard to scale for global markets with let's say a SaaS-based product into different geos. For example, the biggest complaint about for many of the US-based SaaS companies as they grow global, right? Go into Asia, like Japan, Southeast Asian market, or Africa, etc., or the subcontinent. In India being a huge market, a lot of them complain about, hey, okay, this is a very US centric product. I mean,
Mm.
how is it even customized to my experience? Like, it doesn't make sense. I can't. You're building it for the US customer, and you're just deploying it elsewhere. So companies are losing out on a big opportunity to maximize the localization advantage. Like, it's one thing to just at a high level target the English speaking population in many of these geos, but it's another thing to dive deep into the vernacular languages or the local languages and maximize the product opportunity. So this is another area where Gen AI is going to be quite helpful, because machine translations is a topic that is like again skyrocketing with this advent. Natural language processing, real-time translations into multiple languages. That's a huge undertaking. Like just give you the example of at Udemy, for example, we were dealing with millions and millions of hours of educational content, right? So you're talking about translating them into 26 different languages and deploying them across the globe. And as part of those translations, there are things called translation memories and glossaries, which make sure you're using the right terms and the right language.
Mm.
Nothing political seeps in, nothing offensive seeps into those. So there are like so many guardrailing mechanisms, etc. So these things can only be thought about with machine translations at scale. And that's a big, very, very massive use case of where Gen AI is making a huge impact as we build these kinds of products. That's one. In the whole UI experience itself, there is a different kind of onboarding that you might want to build for, let's say, a Japanese customer as opposed to an Indian customer as opposed to a US customer. Some geos want more handholding or more personalization because they're using your product for a very specific use case that could differ from geo to geo. One example that I can talk about from my experience at Udemy, building this leading the globalization team, was B2B customers. Like your company might have a subscription to Udemy or a Coursera, etc. From a US standpoint, I'm consuming what my company is recommending because that's a new skill. My company expects me to know that skill. So, okay, I'm going to take up the course because it's part of my professional development, behavior, etc. So it's quite important for me to do that. Whereas if you think about a Japanese customer, it is very important for them to consume and also take the assessments, etc., that are part of the course or the module deployed, because their bonuses are actually involved, are tied to the consumption of those particular courses. So the intent is different. One is an active intent and the other one is a passive intent. Obviously, for the active intent customer, you have to build some unique experiences for onboarding and reporting on your SaaS-based platform to cater to these different geos. So in a way, if you think about it, it kind of goes against the whole philosophy of what SaaS-based solutions are. It's a standard solution that is very, you're not building any unique applications on that. But it is globalization is kind of stressing that a bit to go a little bit deeper into the internationalization and localization aspects, deep enough that it doesn't become its own application. Rather, it's a kind of like a feature gating mechanism to deploy certain different user experiences in each of these geos. That's how you can scale globalization, using globalization, your products, maximize the local opportunities, and basically gain more traction in terms of uses and revenues.
That, like, that active and the passive users and the intent, that's a very good kind of categorization to think about. So thanks for sharing that. Last question, Karthik. So we have talked about AI on the product itself.
Right.
Now, as you are speaking about different geographies, and these geographies are going to have different cultures and everything, one of the things that I was thinking is there's a lot of play of Gen AI tools. So, say for example, ChatGPT or Perplexity or any other tools that the product owners can use of the app to build this particular feature set and everything. They can chat with it and say, hey, I am rolling out this in UK market, Indian market, whatever, Singapore market, and what are the cultural variances that they have that I should bring that into the product. So I want you to talk a couple of minutes on how product owners can use these tools, Gen AI tools, to understand what are the products features that they can use.
Correct. Yeah, this is one of the this is basically the kind of the Gen AI tool that we are building at PMI, which is called PMI Infinity. It's mainly geared towards the project professionals, but of course, product professionals can use it too as to develop their use cases. See, the first step is please don't try to put your confidential information,
Yeah.
company confidential information to a chat GPT and try to do that. So that's like, a ground rule. Just don't do that. That's not good, because that data is going to be used to train other their LLMs, etc. So it's quite important to use any kind of enterprise solutions for within the company that your company recommends. So that's ground number, rule number one. Let's make sure you do that. Um, but the, chat gpt in itself is not going to be good, because you're prompting it to ask some generic questions, etc. But we should think about more in the agentic workflows. For example, in the project professionals area, we are building Infinity, PMI Infinity, where a project professional can have a bunch of random notes at the beginning of a project, because I'm talking to finance, getting some notes on the project, talking to the leaders, exec leaders, getting some notes about the project, talking to some, let's say the certifications team or the learning team or the product team, getting some information about notes on the product. Those random notes, I can just upload them into Infinity and say, can you just create a charter for me, a project charter, which can generate the project charter with the standards and principles and the discipline that is recommended by PMI. In this particular case, would be the whole PMP framework
Yeah.
of thinking to build a project charter. So basically, it's a RAG that is built on PMI's knowledge base. So that way, you're getting only the most accurate information that is standardized with the latest frameworks and principles and thought processes to build that project charter. So you can think about, that's just example of an agent that can just collect your documents and deploy that. Think about the risk management agent. It can start, as you build up the project, it can start, the agent can just go listen to all the statuses and give you what the project risks look like. You can think about stakeholder management, financial risk management agents. So those are the kinds of agents I would think about in a product workspace. As I think about it, maybe in a product management thing, where a roadmap agent, can I deploy this this agent? If these are my goals for the end of this year, can I just build the roadmap? Can the agent just build the roadmap for me and say, this is when you can target milestone 1, milestone 2, milestone 3, or build a Gantt chart based on product status? So these are all kinds of a good ways where agentic AI workflows can be valuable, as opposed to just using the prompting mechanism to get some chat and get the response, kind of a way of working. I think this is the next step of using it in your day-to-day product deliverables itself.
Thank you. Thank you, Karthik. Thank you for taking the time. It was a very enriching conversation, at least for me, to talk about all of these Gen AI tools independently working, and as well as having it within the product itself, especially with the ecosystem and everything. Thank you so much, Karthik, for taking this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Joseph. Thank you. It was lovely talking to you and the Net Solutions team. Happy to do this and talk to a few other individuals as well. But thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. To all those who joined us, I hope you had a lot of learning as much as I did through this particular conversation. And I wish you that you will connect with us on LinkedIn, where we will share the transcript and clips and all the other learnings that we had from this particular session. Thank you so much. Looking forward. We will be doing this every month. So please join us in successive webinars as well. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.